There's no doubt that after Vatican II there has been a massive apostasy from the Catholic faith and a grave spiritual crisis in Rome. If you want to understand what it means and represents, you need to recognize the facts and the biblical principle that will be covered in this video. In 1 Corinthians 10, St. Paul says that certain things happened to the people of God in the Old Testament as an example for the Church of Christ in the New. There is a pattern to how God deals with his people when they rebel or abandon him. Hence, what God allowed to happen to the Holy City, that is Jerusalem, in the Old Testament period, as a punishment for apostasy, he likewise allows to happen to Rome, the Holy City, in the New Testament period. A study of Scripture's teaching about what happened to Jerusalem at the time of the Babylonian captivity reveals striking parallels to the current situation in Rome, and in particular in regard to the spiritual desolation. Let's consider some of these parallels so that people can better understand that what has occurred in Rome after Vatican II is not the defection of the Catholic Church. Rather, it's a divine punishment on the Holy City and on people who were unfaithful. Indeed, it's the ultimate spiritual desolation and deception of the end times. Understanding these points sheds further light on why God has allowed this situation in Rome to last for decades. Our other material answers these questions in great detail, both from the doctrinal and the prophetic standpoint. However, this video will cover many other important new points that shed additional light on precisely what we're dealing with. The prophet Jeremiah lived before and during the fall of Jerusalem at the hands of Babylon, which occurred in 586 BC. Before it occurred, God told Jeremiah that judgments would come against the holy city and all the cities of Judah, precisely for all their evil in forsaking him. They have made offerings to other gods and, quote, worshipped the works of their own hands, end quote.
They have made offerings to other gods and worshipped the works of their own hands.
Notice, God condemns them for worshiping the works of their hands. Well, many people know that one of the most notorious aspects of the new Mass, that is the new liturgy instituted after Vatican II, which has caused so much undeniable spiritual desolation, is the new offertory. The new offertory abolishes the sacrificial language that's found in the key prayer of the traditional offertory. In the traditional offertory, in anticipation of the actual consecration, the host is referred to as the immaculate victim offered for the sins of faithful Christians, and the wine as the chalice of salvation. That language was offensive to Martin Luther and the Protestants at the time of the, quote, Reformation. As a consequence, they replaced the prayers. Likewise, the new Mass replaces the traditional offertory and instead offers the fruit of the earth and the work of human hands. The words of consecration and the rite of ordination have also been changed in a substantial way after Vatican II, as our material shows. The substantial change to the form of consecration and to the rite of ordination result in an invalid Mass, as we explain in our material. Jesus is not present in the new Mass. It therefore makes perfect sense that the false worship of the new Mass is called the work of human hands in the new liturgy itself, just like the false worship at the time of Jeremiah was described as the work of their own hands.
They have made offerings to other gods and worshipped the works of their own hands.
This bread we offer, fruit of the earth, work of our hands, it will become the bread of life. This wine we offer, fruit of the vine, work of our hands, it will become the cup of joy.
Blessed are you, Lord God of all creation, for through your goodness we have received the bread we offer you, fruit of the earth and work of human hands. It will become for us the bread of life.
That's not just a coincidence. The Vatican II sect and its new liturgy represent a departure from the true faith and from Catholic worship. Also note that the new offertory in the new Mass is based on a Jewish table blessing that Jews used for the Seder meal. In Jeremiah 32, God also mentions that they've angered him by the work of their hands, and in that context he says that they have turned to me their backs and not their faces.
They have turned to me their backs and not their faces.
Well, in the new Mass, they not only worship the work of human hands, but they turn their backs to the Lord by celebrating the new liturgy, facing the people rather than facing the altar. In Jeremiah 2, God says, quote, "The fear of me is not in you," and he gives graphic descriptions of their spiritual fornication. which refers to their acceptance of idolatry and the worship of false gods. Jeremiah 2:20 says, quote, "You bowed down like a whore."
You bow down like a whore.
That is parallel to the abominable false ecumenism and the interreligious apostasy that's officially taught and promoted by the Vatican II sect and its apostate antipopes. The fact that post-Vatican II Rome parallels Jerusalem at the time of the Babylonian captivity makes perfect sense, because the evidence that the Vatican II sect fulfills prophecies about the whore of Babylon, the Antichrist, and the beast or pagan Rome returning is overwhelming. See our videos Apocalypse Now in the Vatican and more. 1 Peter 5:13 also identifies New Testament Babylon with Rome, and specifically with the place where St. Peter is located. The Vatican II sect is not the Catholic Church, but the prophesied end times counterchurch. Why did God choose the name Babylon to describe the end times deception in the city of seven mountains? God called it Babylon to indicate that in the end times, the holy city, Rome, will experience a decades-long desolation as a punishment that parallels what happened to the holy city in the Old Testament at the hands of the Babylonians, and it will happen for similar reasons. Again, remember 1 Corinthians 10:6, quote, "Now these things took place as examples for us," end quote. There have also been events in the Vatican after Vatican II that fulfill with great precision things stated about the end times whore of Babylon. The prophecies in the Apocalypse connect the end times deception with the whore of Babylon, who sits upon the city of seven mountains. This is the great apostasy in which manifestly heretical antipopes, who were not validly elected according to Catholic teaching, who not only teach religious indifferentism, but now openly endorse the quote LGBT agenda, have taken control of the city of Rome in the post-Vatican II period. They have created a counterfeit sect, the Vatican II sect, and this has reduced the true Catholic faithful to a remnant. The doctrinal and factual evidence that this has occurred is irrefutable. Yet many still struggle to accept that God could have allowed such a situation in light of his promises to the Church. They need to realize that indefectibility does not preclude antipopes reigning in Rome or a long vacancy in the chair of St. Peter. There have been over 40 antipopes in church history, including antipopes who have reigned in Rome. It's also part of Catholic teaching that the Church will be greatly reduced in size and prominence at the end of the world. See our video called Saints and Theologians on the End Times. In the Old Testament, God promised that the throne of King David would be perpetual and would have perpetual successors, yet as a punishment for the sins of the people, he left that throne vacant for more than 500 years before Christ's first coming. The long vacancy in the throne did not contradict or invalidate the promise of perpetuity. Likewise, the current vacancy in the chair of St. Peter does not contradict the Church's teaching on the perpetuity of the papal office, because God's promises remain attached to the chair even when it's vacant. See our video called Did the Bible Predict 70 Years Without a Pope? In Jeremiah 3, God says that you have polluted the land with your vile whoredom, and you, quote, have the forehead of a whore, end quote.
You have polluted the land with your vile whoredom. You have the forehead of a whore.
That clearly connects to Apocalypse 17:5, which says,
And on her forehead was written a name of mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and of the earth's abominations.
Jerusalem had the forehead of a whore at the time of Jeremiah because it was the holy city that had rejected God and embraced idolatry. Likewise, in the last days, Rome has the forehead of a whore because Rome was the holy city that, under the leadership of the Vatican II antipopes, has rejected God and embraced idolatry via false ecumenism, the new Mass, etc. These connections further confirm that Catholicism is the one true faith, because they indicate that Rome was established as God's holy city in the New Covenant, and the true Catholic Church still exists as a remnant, as our material explains. The end times deception is about deceiving those who claim to be Catholic, because the Catholic faith is the one true faith. In Jeremiah 4:30, God describes Jerusalem as the desolate one, dressed in scarlet and ornamented with gold.
And you, O desolate one, what do you mean that you dress in scarlet, that you adorn yourself with ornaments of gold?
That's parallel to the description of the whore of Babylon in Apocalypse 17:4, which is dressed in purple and scarlet, the colors of bishops and cardinals, because it has the externals of the true church, but inwardly is a counterfeit. And it also says that the whore is adorned with gold. Apocalypse 17:4 also says that the whore has a golden cup in her hand. This refers to the false priesthood and the false masses of the Vatican II counterchurch. In Jeremiah 4, God says that the prophets will be astounded at what he will do, and that the whole land will be a desolation.
The priests shall be appalled, and the prophets astounded. The whole land will be a desolation.
He says that the people are foolish, stupid children who have no understanding. They are wise in doing evil, but do not know how to do good.
For my people are foolish, they know me not. They are stupid children, they have no understanding. They are wise in doing evil, but how to do good they know not.
The utter desolation that God describes is a fitting description of the post-Vatican II spiritual landscape in the Vatican II counterchurch. Again, these things actually happened at the time of Jeremiah, but they also parallel what God has allowed to happen in the final days.
Oh, is the body of Christ. How beautiful.
In Jeremiah 5, God says that their transgressions are many and their apostasies are great.
Their transgressions are many, their apostasies are great.
He again refers to their spiritual adultery and says that they have forsaken him. As a consequence, he tells them that they shall serve foreigners. In Jeremiah 25, we read that they shall serve the king of Babylon for 70 years.
This whole land shall become a ruin and a waste, and these nations shall serve the king of Babylon 70 years.
Serving the king of Babylon as a punishment for their apostasy also parallels what happened after Vatican II. As we've covered in detail, the apocalyptic prophecies about the return of the beast and the whore of Babylon are connected to anti-pope priest kings of the Vatican city-state, an actual sacerdotal monarchy. The apostate anti-popes John the 23rd through Benedict the 16th were priest kings of the Vatican city-state. That means that they were actual kings as well as leaders of the whore of Babylon. The followers of the Vatican II counterchurch were therefore serving the king of Babylon, similar to what happened at the time of Jeremiah. For much more on the apocalyptic prophecy about the seven kings, see our video Apocalypse Now in the Vatican. The followers of the Vatican II sect are even forced to venerate a number of these apostates, most notably anti-pope John Paul II. That was also prophesied in the Apocalypse, as our material explains. The pagan European Union also represents the kingship of the whore of Babylon, which rules over pagan Europe that has abandoned its Christian roots. In Jeremiah 5:27, God says, quote, "Like a cage full of birds, their houses are full of deceit," end quote.
Like a cage full of birds, their houses are full of deceit.
This is an amazing verse that directly connects to the post-Vatican II apostasy. As we've covered in various videos, on December 8, 2015, during the Fiat Lux Light Show, on the 50th anniversary of the close of Vatican II, images of birds and animals were projected onto the front of St. Peter's Basilica in a way that precisely corresponds to what's written in Apocalypse 18:2 about the whore of Babylon. The word that's translated as prison in Apocalypse 18:2 can also be translated as cage. The columns on the front of St. Peter's Basilica made the animals look like they were being held in a cage, exactly as Apocalypse 18:2 states about Babylon. The event not only connects to Apocalypse 18:2, but also to Jeremiah 5:27's description of what happened to Jerusalem at the time of Babylon.
Like a cage full of birds, their houses are full of deceit.
Also remember that St. Peter's Basilica, which was made to look like a cage full of birds, is the exact location of St. Peter's tomb. 1 Peter 5:13 tells us that New Testament Babylon is located where St. Peter is located. Now consider this. Old Testament Babylon sacked Jerusalem in 586 BC under King Nebuchadnezzar II. In the capital of his Babylonian empire, he is believed to have built the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. They were considered one of the seven wonders of the ancient world. This is a famous depiction of what the Hanging Gardens of Babylon looked like. You can see the vines and the trees hanging over the pillars. These Hanging Gardens of Babylon were perhaps the most prominent feature in the capital of the Babylonian Empire that took God's people into captivity and caused a vacancy in the throne of David. Now look again at the images from the Fiat Lux light show at St. Peter's Basilica. In addition to the images of the birds and beasts, which match the description of the Whore of Babylon in Revelation 18:2, and the description in Jeremiah 5:27, you can see a replication of the hanging gardens of Babylon. Notice the vines hanging over the pillars, just like the hanging gardens of Babylon. If you cannot recognize the parallels in light of these points, then you are blind. This is more clear proof that post-Vatican II Rome is the location of end times Babylon. In Jeremiah 5 and in subsequent chapters, God's pure and righteous anger is on full display.
Shall I not punish them for these things? And shall I not avenge myself on a nation such as this?
God is justly appalled and outraged by the bad will and the apostasy of the people.
For the house of Israel and the house of Judah have been utterly treacherous to me. Behold, my anger and my wrath will be poured out on this place.
That's why God justly brought such a complete desolation upon them. The same applies in the post-Vatican II period. God sees that few people really savor the truth and want to please Him rather than pleasing other people. He knows that they don't deserve anything, so God has allowed almost everything to be taken away except for a remnant that loves the truth and follows Him. In Jeremiah 6, God says that everyone deals falsely from prophet to priest.
From prophet to priest, everyone deals falsely.
They take no pleasure in the word of the Lord.
Behold, the word of the Lord is to them an object of scorn. They take no pleasure in it. Therefore I am full of the wrath of the Lord.
They were not ashamed when they committed an abomination.
Were they ashamed when they committed abomination? No, they were not at all ashamed. They did not know how to blush.
That perfectly describes the bold false ecumenism of the Vatican II sect and its endorsement of the, quote, LGBT agenda. In Jeremiah 6:14, God says, "They say peace, peace, when there is no peace."
Saying peace, peace, when there is no peace.
Well, the most notorious example of spiritual fornication in the post-Vatican II period was the Assisi World Day of Prayer for Peace. They proclaimed peace when there was no peace, another parallel to Jerusalem at the time of Babylon. The book of Jeremiah issues these warnings about God's house, the temple of God in the Old Testament. The prophet Ezekiel also lived at the time of the Babylonian captivity. In Ezekiel 10:18 we read that the glory of the Lord left the temple because of Israel's persistence in idolatry and sin.
Then the glory of the Lord departed from the threshold of the temple and stood over the cherubim.
God abandoned the physical structure and location that had been specifically dedicated to Him and recognized as the primary location of His people's worship. Jeremiah 7:4, quote, "Do not trust in these deceptive words. This is the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord."
Do not trust in these deceptive words. This is the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord.
Many people refuse to believe that God would abandon the temple and the holy city. For this reason, God warned them in advance, telling them not to be deceived. "I will do these things to the holy city as a punishment for your sins and apostasy." In Jeremiah 7:30, God says, quote, "They have set their detestable things in the house that is called by my name to defile it," end quote.
They have set their detestable things in the house that is called by my name to defile it.
In Jeremiah 32:34, we read basically the exact same thing.
They set up their abominations in the house that is called by my name to defile it.
The events of Assisi, the Pachamama procession, and many other events in the post-Vatican II apostasy, including the new Mass itself, fit that description. In Jeremiah 7:14, God says that He will do to His house, the temple, just as He did to Shiloh.
Therefore I will do to the house that is called by my name, and in which you trust, and to the place that I gave to you and to your fathers, as I did to Shiloh.
Shiloh was one of the main centers of Israelite worship prior to the period of the kings. Yet, because of the sins of the people, God abandoned it and allowed it to be destroyed. The New Testament temple is the Vatican and St. Peter's Basilica. See our video called The Temple of God and the Antichrist Located, which covers this in detail. St. Peter's Basilica is even called the Vatican Temple. Even though God remains with the true remnant church, just as He preserved a remnant at the time of Jeremiah, He has indeed abandoned His temple, the Vatican, and Rome. Those places have become the habitation of devils and of every unclean spirit, as Apocalypse 18:2 says. God has allowed antipopes to be established there as a punishment for the sins of the people, just as he abandoned Shiloh before the period of the kings, and he abandoned his own house, the temple, at the time of Jeremiah. In Jeremiah 12:7-8, God says, quote, I have forsaken my house, I have abandoned my inheritance, I have given the beloved of my soul into the hands of her enemies. My inheritance has become to me like a lion in the forest, she has roared against me, therefore I hate her. End quote.
I have forsaken my house, I have abandoned my inheritance. I have given the beloved of my soul into the hands of her enemies. My inheritance has become to me like a lion in the forest. She has roared against me, therefore I hate her.
The passage is another perfect description of what God has allowed to happen in Rome in the last days. By the way, as we see here, the book of Jeremiah mentions a lion in connection to the desolation of the temple of God and the holy city at that time. The Apocalypse also says that the beast, which is connected to the Whore of Babylon, has the mouth of a lion. The current leader of the Whore of Babylon, that is Robert Prevost, took the name of Leo, which means lion. During Compline in the traditional divine office, with words taken from 1 Peter 5:8, Catholics pray and are told to be watchful because your adversary, the devil, goes about as a Leo rugiens, that is, as a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. God's outrage with the people is also expressed in Jeremiah 7:16.
As for you, do not pray for this people, or lift up a cry or prayer for them, and do not intercede with me, for I will not hear you.
God also warns Jeremiah that he will deliver the message to the people, but the people will not listen to him. Jeremiah 7:27, quote, So you shall speak all these words to them, but they will not listen to you. You shall call to them, but they will not answer you.
So you shall speak all these words to them, but they will not listen to you. You shall call to them, but they will not answer you.
In Jeremiah 7:34, God says that he will silence the voice of the bridegroom and the bride in Jerusalem. That's connected to Apocalypse 18:23, which uses almost identical words to describe New Testament Babylon, which, as we've covered, is located at St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. God has allowed Rome and the temple to be desolated, just as he did to Jerusalem under Babylon. But the punishment in the end times is primarily a spiritual desolation and a deception that God allows. That's why the Apocalypse says that people shall wonder or be confused when they see what has occurred in Rome and Babylon. In Jeremiah 8, God again says that they were not ashamed when they committed an abomination. He also indicates that few are saved and among the remnant. Jeremiah 8:13, quote, When I would gather them, declares the Lord, there are no grapes on the vine, nor figs on the fig tree.
When I would gather them, there are no grapes on the vine, nor figs on the fig tree.
In Jeremiah 11, God's utter rejection of the people is once again expressed.
As for you, do not pray for these people. Do not raise up a cry or a prayer on their behalf, for I will not be listening when they call out to me in their time of disaster.
The Lord also informed Jeremiah of a plot against him, which they devised because they didn't want to hear his message or believe his words. In Jeremiah 13, God indicates that this has happened because of the greatness of their iniquity, and that they have forgotten him. In Jeremiah 14:11, God again tells Jeremiah not to pray for this people.
Do not pray for the well-being of this people. Although they may fast, I will not listen to their cry. Although they may offer burnt offerings and grain offerings, I will not accept them.
In Jeremiah 15, God says that even if Moses and Samuel stood before him, his heart would not go out to this people.
Even if Moses and Samuel should stand before me, my heart would not go out to this people.
This passage is another expression of God's just wrath. It's also biblical evidence for the intercession of saints, even if in this case God said that he would not alter his punishment. In Jeremiah 17:5-7, God says that cursed is the man who trusts in man, but blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord.
Cursed is the man who trusts in mankind, who makes mere flesh his strength and turns his heart from the Lord.
This is particularly relevant because the only people who spiritually survive these periods of trial, and the great apostasy in particular, are those with a divine faith rooted in God, not in men or what the crowds say, for almost everyone will be deceived. In Jeremiah 17:10, God says that he rewards man according to what his deeds deserve, another biblical refutation of the heresy of faith alone.
I examine the mind to reward a man according to his way, according to what his deeds deserve.
Jeremiah 18:18 is a very important verse. It states, quote, "Then some said, 'Come, let us make plans against Jeremiah, for the law will never be lost to the priest, nor counsel to the wise, nor an oracle to the prophet. Come, let us denounce him and pay no heed to any of his words.'" End quote.
Then some said,
Come, let us make plans against Jeremiah, for the law will never be lost to the priest, nor counsel to the wise, nor an oracle to the prophet. Come, let us denounce him and pay no heed to any of his words.
People plotted against Jeremiah. They didn't like his message, and they disputed it by asserting that what he's prophesying could not happen. They claimed that the law could not be lost to the priest, nor counsel to the wise, and that people should not pay attention to him. This is directly analogous to what defenders of the Vatican II sect in our day claim, when true Catholics try to tell them and prove with facts and Catholic teaching that the Vatican II sect is obviously not the Catholic Church, the new Mass is not a Mass, the chair of St. Peter has been left vacant by God, and that the Vatican II claimants are anti-popes. They respond by claiming that could not happen, just like the people in Jeremiah's day said that the law cannot be lost to the priest, etc.
For the law will never be lost to the priest, nor counsel to the wise, nor an oracle to the prophet. Come, let us denounce him and pay no heed to any of his words.
They were wrong then, and the defenders of the Whore of Babylon are wrong now. In Jeremiah 19:8, God says, quote, "And I will make this city a horror, a thing to be hissed at," end quote.
And I will make this city a horror, a thing to be hissed at.
This is comparable to how the scandals of post-Vatican II Rome and the Vatican II counterchurch have made it in many ways a mockery before the world. In Jeremiah 20, we read that the chief officer of the temple beat Jeremiah and put him in stocks. In Jeremiah chapter 20, verse 7, Jeremiah complains that he's mocked and laughed at all day long by people who didn't believe his message about God's judgment on the holy city, etc. Quote, "I have become a laughingstock all the day. Everyone mocks me."
I have become a laughingstock all the day. Everyone mocks me. For the word of the Lord has become for me a reproach and derision all day long. Denounce him. Let us denounce him, say all my close friends, watching for my fall. Perhaps he will be deceived. Then we can overcome him and take our revenge on him.
This is also very similar to how many react to those who tell them the truth in our day. In Jeremiah 23:17, we read that the false prophets assured the people that everything will be fine and that no disaster shall come upon them.
They say continually to those who despise the word of the Lord, "It shall be well with you." And to everyone who stubbornly follows his own heart, they say, "No disaster shall come upon you."
That's analogous to the heretics in our day, the defenders of the Vatican II counterchurch, who try to reassure its followers that there couldn't be anti-popes, the chair of St. Peter cannot be vacant, etc., even though all the evidence proves that that's exactly what has happened. In Jeremiah 33, we find God's promise that King David shall never lack a man to sit upon his throne.
David shall never lack a man to sit on the throne of the house of Israel.
Yet shortly thereafter, Babylon sacked Jerusalem, took King Zedekiah, the successor to David's throne, into exile, where he died. Following Zedekiah's death around 586 BC, there was no successor to David's throne for over 500 years until Jesus himself came the first time and sat upon the throne. It's a clear biblical proof that a perpetual promise attached to an office does not preclude an extended vacancy in the office. And just like there was a long vacancy in the throne of David before Christ's first coming, there is a long vacancy in the throne of St. Peter before Christ's second coming. In the same chapter, God says, quote, "I have hidden my face from this city because of all their evil," end quote.
I have hidden my face from this city because of all their evil.
Various verses in Jeremiah 51 directly correspond to verses in the Apocalypse about the Whore of Babylon. For example, Jeremiah 51:7 refers to Babylon as a golden cup.
Babylon was a golden cup in the Lord's hand, making all the earth drunken. The nations drank of her wine. Therefore the nations went mad.
See the parallel in Apocalypse 17:4.
The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and jewels and pearls, holding in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the impurities of her fornication.
Jeremiah 51:9 says that her judgment has reached up to heaven.
For her judgment has reached up to heaven.
See Apocalypse 18:5 for the parallel.
For her sins have reached unto heaven, and the Lord has remembered her iniquities.
Jeremiah 51:45 says, "Go out from her, my people,"
Go out of the midst of her, my people.
which is exactly what Apocalypse 18:4 says about followers of end times Babylon.
Then I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, lest you take part in her sins.
There's no doubt that the Whore of Babylon, the end times Vatican II counterchurch in Rome, the Vatican II sect, corresponds to the period of the Babylonian captivity. The men who are leading this counterchurch are not valid popes, as our material proves. They must be rejected. People who have left the Catholic Church to become Eastern Orthodox or Protestant or something else because they were dismayed by the post-Vatican II changes and the apostasy have made a foolish decision. They have failed to recognize the Bible's teaching and message about what God allows and what He does when His people rebel against Him.
I have forsaken my house. I have abandoned my inheritance. I have given the beloved of my soul into the hands of her enemies.
The Catholic faith is the one true faith, and it's necessary for salvation. The true Catholic Church still exists, but it has been reduced to a remnant as prophesied. To be a true Christian and be saved, one must be a traditional Catholic, as our material explains. We also recommend that people, if they can, pray 15 decades of the Rosary each day and the Hail Mary frequently.